The world had never seen anything like it. News feeds interrupted, social media exploded, headlines flashed in every language. Pope Leo XIV breaks 500 years of silence after shocking message from Burkina Faso. A camera cuts to a small makeshift studio in Ouagadougou. Behind a simple wooden desk sits a man whose presence fills the screen, not with flamboyance, but with an unmistakable gravity. His name is Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso, soldier, revolutionary, defender of African dignity. His eyes are steady, his voice, low but sharp, slices through the noise. The world has lied to you. Our history has been rewritten, our pain ignored, our dignity stolen. But today, we speak. He leans in, hands pressed against the desk. This is not just about Burkina Faso. This is about every African, every forgotten nation, every voice silenced under the weight of empires, and what you are about to hear will change everything. The screen flickers. A scan of a letter appears. The Vatican seal, the signature of Pope Leo XIV. Before we continue, subscribe to this channel. You're not going to believe what's inside this letter. And trust me, you won't hear this anywhere else. The broadcast cuts back to Traoré. His expression hardens. I wrote to the Pope, not as a beggar, not as a subordinate, as a son of this continent, as a man who refuses to watch his people bleed while the world pretends we do not exist. The world holds its breath. This is not a diplomatic letter. This is not politics as usual. It is a confrontation centuries in the making. Traoré's fingers trace the edges of the paper before him. He reads aloud. To His Excellency President Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Sovereign Nation of Burkina Faso. I received your letter not as a political communiqué nor as a diplomatic demand, but as the cry of a soul, powerful, principled, painful. Traoré pauses. Lets the weight of those words settle. He continues. Let me begin not with defense but with confession. Silence. Yes, the Church has, at moments in history, stood beside colonizers when it should have stood beside the crucified. There were chapters where the mission of salvation became entangled in the machinery of subjugation, where the banner of the cross was hoisted beside flags of empire. For these sins, sins of omission and commission, I bow my head in repentance. The room darkens. Images flash across the screen. Colonial troops marching alongside missionaries. Churches built next to slave ports. Priests blessing ships filled with chained bodies. This is not history, Traoré says. This is memory. A memory the world told us to forget. He stands, no longer reading but speaking from the depth of generations wounded. They told us that salvation came from across the sea. That civilization was something we had to be given. They told us to kneel, to obey, to forget who we are. A map appears behind him, Africa carved up by foreign hands. Borders drawn not by people, but by rulers in faraway lands. For centuries we asked, does anyone hear us? Does anyone see us? His fist slams the table. And finally, someone did. He lifts the letter. You ask, will this papacy be different? He reads. Not only will it be different, it must be. A pause, a shift in his tone. But words are not enough. Confessions are not enough. The world must understand, this letter is not an ending. It is the beginning of a reckoning. He leans forward one last time. Stay with me, because what comes next will shake the very foundation of everything you thought you knew. The screen fades to black. The words flash. Part 2, The Weight of History, coming up next. Make sure you're subscribed. Click the notification bell. You don't want to miss what happens next. The screen returns. The camera zooms in on Traoré's face, stoic, unshaken, but with a fire burning behind his eyes. You've heard the opening words, he says, but it goes deeper, much deeper. He lifts the letter again, his fingers gripping the edges like it carries the weight of 1,000 ancestors. His voice lowers but becomes sharper, every syllable hitting like thunder. The Church stood beside colonizers, when it should have stood beside the crucified. He repeats it slowly. Let that sink in. The camera cuts to footage, black and white images of African men forced to carry timber to build churches, priests walking behind soldiers, missionaries smiling next to colonial governors. You were told the cross came to save, Traoré says, but behind the cross and followed the sword. His voice trembles, not with fear, but with restrained rage. Our ancestors knelt at altars, while their lands were being mapped for extraction. They were baptized, while their names, their languages, their spirits were erased. Another line from the letter fills the screen, this time read by the Pope's own voice, a recording leaked by an anonymous source. Entire civilizations, with their poetry, their proverbs, their cosmologies, their sacred rhythms, were silenced under foreign flags and foreign gods. Traoré closes his eyes for a second. The weight of generations pulses through him. Do you hear this? Finally, they admit it, what we've always known. Crowds appear on the screen, masses gathered in Ouagadougou, Dakar, Nairobi, Accra. Some cry, others raise fists in defiance, others simply whisper, "It's real." They finally said it. Back to Traoré. His tone shifts, not softer but heavier. They came with crosses in one hand and contracts of domination in the other, baptismal fonts next to whips, scriptures beside swords. Images flash, whips cracking, chains rattling, churches being constructed alongside military barracks. This is not hatred speaking, Traoré clarifies. This is not division. This is truth, and truth is the highest form of love. He scans the next paragraph. His voice tightens. Christ was never a colonizer. He was a carpenter from Nazareth, brown-skinned, occupied, poor. Silence. A beat. Do you understand what this means? He asks the audience, eyes piercing the lens. The figure they used to dominate us would have stood with us. Against them. He paces now, unable to sit. The energy has shifted from revelation to confrontation. For centuries they told us our gods were demons, our ancestors were savages, our rituals were primitive. And yet, the Pope's own words confess that the true betrayal was theirs. The screen cuts to the streets of Paris, London, Rome. Protests erupt. African youth in the diaspora hold signs, "Return what you stole." No justice, no peace. Truth is not hatred. It was never just land they stole, Traoré continues. It was never just gold. It was identity. It was memory. It was the very soul of our people. His voice grows sharper. And now the silence is broken. A final quote appears on the screen, bold, undeniable. If the church is to truly mirror Christ, it must weep where Christ would weep. And surely, he weeps for what was done in his name on African soil. Traoré's gaze pierces the camera one last time. This is only the beginning, because what they did to our spirit is nothing compared to what they did to our future. And next, we talk about the blood beneath our soil. The screen fades to black. The screen lights back up. The world is watching. The tension is no longer curiosity, it's fire. Traoré steps forward, his hand no longer holding the letter. This time he holds a piece of rock, ordinary to the untrained eye, until the camera zooms in. It glitters faintly. Gold. This, Traoré says, holding it up, is what the world has killed us for, century after century. He turns it in his hand, watching it catch the light. Our soil bleeds wealth, but our people starve. The camera cuts to drone footage, gold mines in Burkina Faso, cobalt pits in the DRC, uranium fields in Niger. Thousands of African men and women laboring under the sun, some barefoot, others with no helmets, no safety, no future. When the Pope said, he glances at the paper, Africa is rich, yet her children remain poor. He wasn't exaggerating. His voice darkens. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't bad luck, it was design, engineered poverty. Orchestrated theft. Images appear, satellite views of cargo ships leaving African ports, filled with minerals, oil, timber. Beside those ships, military vessels, foreign flags, foreign guns. While our mothers give birth in hospitals lit by candles, billion-dollar cargo leaves our shores guarded by men with accents not from this land. A silence hangs. Then Traoré punches the next line. That is not trade. That is extraction. That is theft. The screen flashes with documents, trade agreements, IMF contracts, World Bank deals signed decades ago. Red circles highlight words: structural adjustment, privatization, resource concessions. They call it partnership, Traoré spits. I call it economic warfare. The Pope's letter echoes on screen. It was never underdevelopment. It was policy. It was greed. It was engineered stagnation, orchestrated debt, predatory agreements signed in glass towers while farmers walked barefoot through dust. Traoré slams his fist on the table. The Vatican didn't sign the contracts, but it stood silent. Silent when our land was carved. Silent when puppet regimes were installed. Silent when blood was turned into profit. A map appears, dots marking foreign military bases across Africa. US, France, China, Russia, all represented. You think colonization ended? Traoré demands. No, it just changed uniforms. Now they wear suits. Now they call it aid. Now they send drones instead of ships. Now they destabilize governments. Then offer stability at a price. He pauses, his gaze cutting through the lens. When an African leader says, "Let us own our minerals," the world screams, "Dictator." Images flash, leaders overthrown, coups, assassinations, news anchors calling it a fight for democracy, while behind closed doors, CEOs sign new mining contracts. But when a foreign CEO exploits those same minerals, they call him innovator. The Pope's words return, "We will no longer speak of poverty without naming its architects." Traoré steps forward. His voice lowers, but every word feels heavier. So I ask you, who built this system? Who profits when a child in Burkina Faso drinks muddy water, while barrels of oil leave this continent by the hour? Footage rolls, villages with no electricity next to pipelines, children in tattered clothes walking beside roads used by trucks loaded with gold. If prosperity for the few is built on the perpetual depletion of the many, then that is not civilization. That is organized crime. His tone sharpens like a blade. Africa does not need saving. We need space to breathe, space to rise, space to govern our destiny, without manipulation, without economic chains, without the handcuffs disguised as foreign aid. He steps back, looks straight at the camera, and if you think this ends with gold and oil, so wait until you hear what they stole from our minds, from our memory, from our very identity. The screen fades to black. The screen fades back in, not with music, not with fanfare, only silence. The kind of silence that feels sacred, or maybe suffocating. Traoré steps forward, holding something different this time. Not a letter, not a rock, but a worn, faded photograph. "This," he begins, "is my grandfather." The image zooms in, an elder dressed in traditional robes, standing in front of a mud brick compound, his gaze firm. "He told me stories, stories of who we were, before the world renamed us, before the world rewrote us, before the world erased us." Traoré lowers the photo and locks eyes with the camera. His voice sharpens, because this is the deepest wound, deeper than stolen gold, deeper than borders carved by strangers. This is the theft of memory. Images flood the screen, museum halls in London, Paris, Berlin, glass cases holding African masks, bronzes, sculptures, labels beneath them. Origin unknown at West Africa, circa 1800, acquired 1892. "Do you see it?" Traoré demands. "Our ancestors, behind glass. Our genius displayed like trophies, our sacred reduced to souvenirs." The Pope's words echo across the screen. The theft of Africa is not only found in her gold, but in the erasure of her memory. A wound, intimate, devastating. Footage rolls, French soldiers loading crates onto ships, British colonial officers cataloguing artifacts, missionaries burning shrines, seizing manuscripts. They didn't just take statues, Traoré says, his fists tightening. They took our history, our languages, our stories, our gods, and then they told us we were primitive. The screen cuts to a chilling fact. 90% of Africa's cultural heritage is held outside the continent. He raises his voice. A child in Ouagadougou learns that their ancestors' treasures are safer in Paris than in their own village. Their grandfather's wisdom locked behind security glass thousands of miles away. And they dare call it preservation? The Pope's confession continues. How do you protect what you first stole? A beat of silence. Then Traoré slams the line. Exactly. He gestures to an image, an ancient manuscript from Timbuktu. This was taken for safekeeping, but it was never returned. Our knowledge, our science, our philosophy, taken, renamed, and sold back to us as Western civilization. His tone drops, heavy, almost breaking. What do we say to the griots whose voices were silenced? To the elders whose stories were labeled superstition? To the children who were told that to be civilized, they must forget who they are? The camera pans to young Africans protesting outside the British Museum. Their chants echo, "Return what you stole." Traoré holds the photograph again. My grandfather told me. Son, they can take the gold. They can take the land. But the worst thing they can ever take is your memory, because if you forget who you are, you become who they tell you to be. He turns, points at the camera, but we remember, and we demand. The Pope's letter flashes one more time. It is time. Time to return what was taken, not as charity, but as justice. Traoré's voice trembles, not with fear, but with something stronger. A promise. This is not just about artifacts. This is not about museums. This is about dignity, about a continent standing and saying, no more. Our history is not yours to display. Our soul is not yours to narrate. Our future is ours. A final line delivered like a hammer. And when you steal someone's memory, you try to steal their future. But Africa remembers. The screen fades to black. The screen fades back in. No music, no filters, just Traoré, standing taller than ever. Behind him, the flag of Burkina Faso. Around him, images of African leaders, elders, youth, a continent awake. We've uncovered the truth, Traoré begins, the theft of our resources, the betrayal of our spirits, the erasure of our memory. His gaze sharpens, his tone shifts, not just defiant, but prophetic. But this is not a funeral for the past. This is a birth, a beginning, a covenant for the future. He lifts the letter from the Pope one last time. His hands no longer tremble. They are steady, firm, ready. Forgiveness, he says slowly, does not mean forgetting. Forgiveness, it means remembering. With truth. The screen splits. On one side, African youth building homes, coding software, teaching in classrooms. On the other, empty colonial statues, toppled and broken. We do not seek vengeance, Traoré continues. We seek dignity. We seek a future where Africa no longer begs for crumbs from tables built on her own stolen wealth, but builds her own table from her own hands. The Pope's final words flash. The Church will no longer be neutral in the face of injustice. We will build not walls of silence, but bridges of justice. The camera cuts to scenes of the Vatican announcing the formation of the African Council of Memory and Mercy. Headlines read, Vatican to return stolen artifacts. New theological schools open in Africa. Church declares support for full African sovereignty. Traoré leans in. For centuries, they told us our identity was a burden. They were wrong. Our identity is our superpower. Images flood the screen. African engineers designing satellites, farmers restoring ancient agricultural techniques, women leading universities, artists filling city walls with murals of forgotten heroes. Africa does not rise because the world allows it. Africa rises because it was always destined to rise. He raises his hand. His voice grows louder, a crescendo not just of sound but of history itself. To the leaders who think Africa must stay in chains, hear me, your time is over. To the institutions that think we will trade sovereignty for aid, your time is over. To those who still believe Africa is a charity case, look again. This continent does not need saving. This continent needs space, to breathe, to grow, to govern itself. The Pope's final pledge flashes one more time. The Vatican will not merely ask how we can help Africa, but how we can dismantle the systems that have hurt her for centuries. Traoré's tone softens, but only slightly. This is not just a letter between two men, this is a covenant between two worlds. A covenant that says no continent owns compassion. No nation owns dignity, and no empire owns the future. A long pause, he steps back. Behind him, children laugh, drummers play, elders raise their hands to the sky. To the African youth, this is your moment. Reclaim your stories, build your future. Wear your identity not as armor, but as a crown. To the world, understand this truth. Africa is not your past. Africa is your future. The screen begins to fade, but his voice carries through, and as long as we breathe, we will never forget who we are. Text appears in bold. The rise of Africa begins now. Thank you for watching. If this truth resonated with you, subscribe now, and click the video appearing on your screen to continue this journey of awakening. Don't miss what's next. The screen fades fully to black. Drums echo in the distance.